The weighting we are going to do on the second, third, and fourth woolly boogers, the proportions, we will explain them, that the tail will be 1 shank length of the hook. This fly has 3 parts in the body. I do not count the thread and the hook as a part. It'll be the tail, which will be marabou. The body will be made out of chenille, wrapped black sparkly chenille, which by the way is sold as a woolly booger chenille. It's size medium, and the palmering of a hackle feather. One of the big things here will be prepping the hackle feather for wet fly application. The chenille, this does have a string core in it, and we will pluck off a little of the fuzzy so that we can tie that down. Helps make a neater looking fly. And the palmering of the hackle feather, which gives the fly the look of legs. We can talk about how and when to fish it a little bit later. Questions before we get started? All right. Now, working with marabou can be a little bit of a pain in the neck. You'll see me go to my mouth, wet my fingers, get the static out of that marabou, make it lay down. That's optional, but I find that works a little better for me. Another, if you don't want to go to your mouth and wet the marabou, a decent thing to do is have a sponge on a, per se, a small plate, and push the marabou onto the sponge and get some of that static out of it. And that way you have much greater control over the material. Again, black thread. Some of these flies, that the second and third fly we do, that are going to be weighted, but you won't be able to see the weight. A lot of people will take and change the color of the thread to finish the fly so that they know that's a weighted fly. That's up to you. I weight flies. I have a tendency to underweight them, and the reason being, I can always add weight to go down, but I can't subtract it from a pre-made fly. And I hate a fly that goes to the bottom like a bowling ball. I like it to have some movement. That's just me. I like long fly rods and small flies. Again, we're going to leave that unused space at the eye, equivalent to about an eye. And you'll notice that a lot of fly tiers will hold the scissors in their hand. Before serious arthritis, I used to be able to do that. I can't do it anymore. And again, I'm bringing the thread just past the point of the hook, approximately halfway between the point and the barb. I'm going to take a piece of marabou, like such. This is pretty nice material. And again, I'm going to estimate that's going to be my tail, and I'm too long. And based on the thicker part of the marabou, I'm going to use that as my tail right there. I'll make sure my material stays on the top. You want to make sure it's down hard. Now, we've got 3 choices to do with this. We can cut it off, We can twist it into we can bring the thread forward, we can twist that into a rope and wrap it, or we can twist it into a rope, lay it on the top of the hook, which will give the fly a little bit more width, and just get this thread forward very quickly. It gives you a little bit more of an underbody. And I gotta watch I don't lose my space. I have a tendency in most, nice going, Truman, most flies to try to bring the material the whole length of the hook. And you can see I just cut my own thread. And I'd love to have them $5 every time I've done that. Alright, I've secured the tail. My tail looks pretty good. It's even on both sides. I'm going to trim a little of my mistake out here. Alright, we got two materials to go on. The hackle and the chenille. With two materials on the body, it's not as important as it is if there were 3, 4, or 5 materials going to form this body. But you tie these on in reverse order of use. The material that you're going to use last, you tie on first. I still practice this. It's just me. The last thing I'm going to do for the body of this fly is use the hackle. So I'm going to tie my hackle on first, then I'm going to tie on my chenille. I'll wrap my chenille forward, tie it off, palmer my hackle forward and tie it off. So you build the fly from the back and you tie your material on in reverse order. And I've got some woolly boogers here someplace with me that have 4 materials in the body. Questions so far? Don't hesitate. Now, I'm going to try to pick a hackle feather here. I'm going to show you how you would size that. You can use one of those gauges that they sell, but you've got a gauge right in front of you with your hook. If you take your hackle feather, put it under your hook, lift it up, how does that look for a start? Pretty good, right? I'm going to use that hackle feather. What I'm going to do, let me see if I can get my fingers in front of here without knocking everything off. I hold the feather by its tip, the skinny part, and then with my material hand, I take and I stroke back the fibers. I'm making them stand out against the center part of the feather. Again, this is wet fly subsurface preparation. And there it looks somewhat like a goofy long pine tree. How does that show up there, guys?
Good.
Okay. Now, if you'll notice that the end of the feather has something here, I call it, it looks like a candle flame. That's what I'm going to use to tie on with. By the way, if I knock this and you can't see it, holler. I'm going to tie my hackle feather on at the back. I'm going to bind that end down. I'm going to get a little of that garbage out of the way. I'm going to take my chenille. Another habit I have before I use it, I try to puff it up. And I'll get in front of this. And when you strip off the black fuzzy, Does that little bit of white show up in there? Okay, that's the core. That's what we tie on. And I'm going to tie that core down well. I'm going to get my thread back up. I'm leaving my usable space at front to finish the fly. Now I'm going to start to wrap my hackle. Remember what I told you last week? I like to give it a fluff.
Wrapping away from you, right?
I'm always wrapping away. Next week you will wrap at you. And I'm going to bring this right up to my thread. I'm going to stop. I'm going to throw my thread over 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. I'm going to give it a little tighten, and I'm going to put 1 wrap right in front of it. That locks her down. Now when I cut my material, I'm going to hold my material up. Do you see the angle of the eye of the hook?
Yep.
I'm not going to square cut my material. I'm going to cut my material off at that angle. Reason being, when I go to finish the fly, I'm finishing the head on a taper. I'm not trying to overcome a right angle. Now I'm going to palmer my feather. Now, I like, when I can get it, to get a wrap of hackle right in the back, and I'm not going to get it on this one. I'm kind of cramped here. I'm going to pull my hackle feather into the grooves that were made by the chenille, and this represents the legs. I'm going to come forward and now I've got enough feather. I'm going to give it 1 full wrap. Whoop. Is it visible?
Yes.
Now I'm going to throw it over 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, little tightening of the thread, 1 out in front of it. I'm going to cut my hackle feather, if I can see it. I kind of pull everything back. I leave my left thumb fingernail on the long side just for this. I'm going to finish the fly. Now, something that I do is on the hook, when they fabricate the hook, there's a gap there. I have had tippet get in that gap and break on itself. So when I finish the fly, I try to make sure that that gap, and that's just me, is closed. And that's not the best woolly bugger I ever tied. I'm going to give it 2 4-turn knots. Again, what's the secret to the Mattarelli?
Practice.
Left hand. The hand that you think doesn't do anything. And again, a pair of scissors that are made for, that hackle didn't come out right in the front. A pair of scissors that is made for synthetic materials. When you're tying a lot of woolly boogers and you're using a lot of chenille, they're well worth the money. Save your good scissors. I don't know, let's see. I didn't have quite enough hackle feather to give it a good wrap on the front, but is that visible?
Yes.
Okay. I love the length of that hackle. Straight on, it looks pretty good. You got that little bit of sparkle. And by palmering the hackle in between the grooves of the chenille, you pick up some body segments. I'm happy with my tail. Are you happy with my tail? How does it look?
It was a personal question.
I knew
I
you
don't
were
know
going
exactly what you tell your wife.
I'm not sure of that either anymore. Questions, gentlemen? Ladies? Okay.